Thank you, Yeshua. What a wonderful day. It's even a beautiful day here. Of course, it's a good day that, you know, anytime we have one because Yeshua made it, but He made this one really good, so we appreciate it. And we appreciate the time that we're in, time of Passover and unleavened bread. And tomorrow being first fruits, and you know, and I hope everybody kind of understands what first fruits is. It's I know we all, or I did too for many years, thought that, you know, first fruits was Yeshua Himself being the first fruits of the resurrection, but that's not really true. Yeshua is the resurrection. And then He has He presented first fruits unto Yahweh in the form of saints that rose after He did. But we are not into that today, but we thank God for first fruits. I just wanted to mention that because so many today, denominations and even some of the Messianic or Hebrew roots people are using the occasion of first fruits to extort money from others. You know, today, tomorrow, you know, send in your first fruits offering, and you know, they don't understand the concept of first fruits to start with. But anyway, I kind of used it for that. You know, don't be extorted. Understand what first fruits is all about, starting tomorrow. But or it will, first fruits will be the actual first fruits offering was presented on what we consider what we call the first day after Sabbath. But anyway, we're so glad tonight to be with us again, and all of you that's with us. We're just really thrilled, and we're really thrilled about, you know, our lesson. You know, I said, you know, I talked about, I'm sorry, I was thinking about the time that, you know, we're in today, being Passover and unleavened bread, and I thought, you know, if you really catch what today's lesson is all about, it really brings out the fact of Passover and unleavened bread, and you know, the first fruits, and you know, or at least it reminds us and brings out the very act of Passover and unleavened bread. And I hope we'll see that in the lesson today. Thank you, Yeshua. Thank you, Yeshua. You know, it's a wonderful time to know, you know, in your own heart. I'm going to say this. 40 years, I confessed, or it's a little over 40 years, but 40 years in a ministry, I confessed to know Yeshua. And confessed to looking forward to one day, you know, going back and going with Him. But you know something, there was always something in my mind, something in the back of my mind saying, are you truly ready? If He come today, are you truly ready? And for many, many years, I had that, spine-tingling thought so often. Are you truly ready? Come on. But for the last 6.5 years now or more, that question doesn't even enter my mind, because I know right now I'm truly ready. Because right now, I truly have the Spirit of Yeshua that it takes to draw me home when He calls. Oh, hallelujah. There's nothing like a true, I taught and thought I was teaching, trying to teach, trying to do that, but there was always something. Do you know? Do you know? Do you know? Right now I know. And
yes.
I don't have any questions, and that question doesn't even come to my mind anymore. And it hasn't for quite some time now. But thank Yeshua.
Yes.
Because now He has fully opened my heart and opened my mind and my eyes to His truth.
Yes.
Not to what I was taught and was teaching, but what He really, His truths. And that's what I'm trying anymore to teach. And and it seems so often sometimes I get so discerning that somebody that be able to tell somebody about this true and living way today. I get so, desiring to, when I hear people talking about, when they're following man and following the traditions of man, whether it be Jew or Gentile traditions, Christian or Jew traditions. Sometimes I just get such an urge to tell them to just look to Yeshua. To just look to Yeshua.
Yes.
And this Passover, and it already being fulfilled by Yeshua, the Passover and the unleavened bread and the first fruits already being fulfilled, and the next one too, the Feast of Shavuot, Pentecost, is already being fulfilled by Yeshua. Understand that it's no longer, as we have been, as we taught Tuesday night, and then we had our meal and our memorial unto Yeshua Wednesday night. That's what I want people to understand. There is a difference, and as we've been teaching all these last several Sabbaths, that there is a difference in that the old covenant and His covenant, now the new covenant of Yeshua, with Him being our high priest and no longer under the priesthood of the Levitical priesthood and the Aaronic high priesthood. But now we're under His. And if there wasn't a need, if there wasn't something wrong with the first one, there would never be a reason for a second one,
right.
A new one.
Amen.
So we got to understand there is something wrong with the old covenant, therefore needing a new one, and therefore Yeshua fulfilling that new one and bringing forth and putting in place a new covenant. And we went through in the 7th and the 8th chapters here, the whole book of Hebrews, concerning Yeshua and the superiority of Yeshua, the superiority of His priesthood, the superior over the Levitical priesthood, the superiority over the way He brings the laws and the way Moses' law was, the superiority of Yeshua. And, the last verse of last week's teaching, the 8th verse there, the last verse there, it said, "In that He saith a new covenant. He hath made the first old now, and for the first old. Now that which decayeth and waxeth old is ready to vanish away. And now we are under a new covenant." And our 9th verse, or 9th chapter here, we want to read it. And I'll probably read about 10 or 12 verses here before I stop, like I did last week, because I want us to get the concept of what he is actually talking about and what he's saying here, and then we can go back over those verses that we read. But now I want you to listen they're here now, and he's contrasting or comparing these verses, and in this chapter he's comparing the old and the new, and the insufficiency, if you will, of the old and the efficiency of the new. And so I want you to listen, and I want you to listen close, and then we will kind of discuss over and go back over the verses that I read here. But I want you to listen. And the 9th chapter in the first verse, after he has said that the old is, and by the way, when this was written, it wasn't written in verses and chapters. It was written as a letter. Man has divided it into verses and chapters. So when we read and we study, we need to have that concept in the mind that the person doing the writing here did not divide this in chapters and verses. It was written as a letter, and so we can go back to any part of the last chapter and bring into the 9th chapter. But the last verse there of the last chapter, that man is divided, it says, "In that he saith a new covenant, he hath made the first old. Now that which decayeth and waxeth old is ready to vanish away. Then verily the first covenant had also ordinances of divine service and a worldly sanctuary. For there was a tabernacle made, the first, the first, wherein was the candlestick, and the table, and the showbread, which is called the sanctuary." Now, I think I told y'all, and I know I said I would read 3 or 4, but I'll make this statement. I would read 11 or 12, whatever. But I need to make this statement. I think when I showed y'all the demonstration on the board the other day about the other service, about Yeshua being this, being of all of the furnishings and so forth of the tabernacle, and then him being all of that in us now. If I believe I explained then that the actual courtyard where the sacrificial altar and the laver was not actually part of the sanctuary itself. It was part of the whole, but there was a sanctuary, a tabernacle, in which the other parts of the covenant or of the tabernacle was in there, and he's talking here, and that's what he's referring to here. About the tabernacle itself, wherein there were 2 rooms in that tabernacle. One of them held the candlesticks and the table and the showbread, and which is called the sanctuary part. And after the second veil, the next part of the sanctuary, of the tabernacle, after the second veil, the tabernacle, which is called the holiest of all, is what he says here, but holiest of holy, which had the golden censer and the ark of the covenant overlaid round about with gold, wherein was a golden pot that had manna, and Aaron's rod that budded, and the tables of the covenant. And over it the cherubims of glory, shadowing the mercy seat, of which we cannot now speak particularly, specifically of that of the mercy seat. Now when these things were thus ordained, the priests went always in the first tabernacle, that being where the candlestick and the showbread and the table and so forth was at, accomplishing the service of Yahweh. But unto the second went the high priest alone, once every year, not without blood, which he offered for himself the high priest himself, and for the errors of the people. The Holy Spirit, this signifying that the way into the holiest of all was not yet made manifest. It was not made known. While as the first tabernacle was yet standing, which was a figure for the time then present, in which were offered both gifts and sacrifices, that could not make him that did the service perfect as pertaining to the conscience. In other words, it could not clean your soul. Which stood only in meats and drinks and divers washings and carnal ordinances, imposed on them until the time of Reformation. But Messiah, being come a high priest of good things to come, by a greater and more perfect tabernacle, not made with hands, that is to say, not of this building. In other words, not of the earthly tabernacle. And neither by the blood of goats and calves, but by his own blood he entered in once into the holy place, having obtained eternal redemption for us. For if the blood of bulls and of goats and of ashes of heifers sprinkling the unclean sanctified to the purifying of the sanctifieth unto the purifying of the flesh, how much more shall the blood of the Messiah, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without spot to Yahweh, purge you, cleanse you, your conscience from dead works to serve the living Yahweh, Elohim. Now we want to go back over these and look at them a little more carefully. And as the very first verse there, I don't know about everybody else, but it makes it so simple, at least to me. You know, then verily the first, now you remember, Tuesday night when I was teaching, you know, and we was reading in Matthew there about the disciples coming to him and asking about where he would want, you know, to eat the Passover. Them not realizing what was really going to be the Passover for that year. And that time, the scripture said, and upon the first day of, I forget now where it said Passover, I think it said Passover, or unleavened bread, but I think it said Passover. Then verily the first day, and I explained to you about the Greek word first there, doesn't necessarily mean this being the first day of Passover. That also the Greek word also means, you know, before or prior to, you know, so if we look at the verse of the same word here, it says, verily the prior covenant, or the covenant before, had also ordinances, you know, then verily the first covenant, which we refer to as the first covenant, had also ordinances of divine service and a worldly, did you notice what he's saying here? A worldly, earthly sanctuary. Now, it's not the heavenly sanctuary. It's not, you know, it's a worldly, an earthly, a carnal sanctuary. It didn't have the true. And we will see here in a little while where it was talking about that it was simply a figure of that was to come, which you and I now have set up in us, but being also one of these days being able to enter into it, into the heavenly realm and into that sanctuary and that place when Yeshua comes back. But anyway, it's, you know, it's a worldly. The first covenant contained ordinances of divine service, and a worldly sanctuary. And it gives the description of that sanctuary. For there was a tabernacle, a worldly, earthly, carnal tabernacle building made. And within it, the first part of the tabernacle, or the first room or tabernacle, wherein was the candlestick and the table and the showbed, which is called the sanctuary, or the holy place, where that as it's going to say, it's going to describe also the holiest of all sanctuaries, the second room, the second tabernacle there, which it could only be entered in one time at that time, during the generation or the reigning period of the first covenant. And it says, and after the second veil, the tabernacle, which is called the holiest of all, which had the golden censer and the ark of the covenant, overlaid round about with gold, wherein was the golden pot. Now we're talking about here the ark of the covenant. And this ark of the covenant here, it held these special things that Yahweh had presented or given unto the children of Israel. Within that ark of the covenant, that was overlaid round about with gold, wherein was the golden pot that had the manna, which, if we look at, why would, Yahweh have Moses have a pot of manna and put it in there? Well, that in effect was the bread of life. That was what sustained the children of Israel in that period of time, and it was a symbol of life. And also Aaron's rod that budded. When the children of Israel, once again, if we will notice, when the children of Israel began to doubt Moses and the priesthood of Aaron, that Aaron would be the high priest, that the others came to him, and you can read this in the Torah, how that they begin to complain, and they begin to say, well, there can be other priests, and they can be this, and Yahweh had Moses to come before them and tell them, said, here, take your rods, and you place them here. We'll take the rod of Aaron, and we'll place it there also with yours, and the rod that Yahweh causes to bud. Now, this was a dead stick, but the rod that Yahweh causes to bud, that one is the true priesthood, and that one is the one, of the high priest. That one is the one that is chosen of Yahweh. And of course we know what happened. That Aaron's rod is the one that budded, and it was the one, in other words, that was chosen for that generation, for him to be, him and of his loins would be of the high priest, and that was the ones that was to administer in the high priest's office at that time. And of course, the tables of the covenant are the plaques, or the stones of which was written upon Yahweh's 10 Commandments, as we refer to them today. But the tables of Yahweh's covenant. That was Yahweh's covenant when he came down to enjoin Israel as his bride. This is what he made the covenant with them. If you will, look on me as the only God. Make me your only God. I am Yahweh. that delivered you out of Egypt. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. And well, we went on ahead, and you shall not make any graven images of things in heaven, of things on earth, or beneath the earth, and thou shalt not bow down unto those graven images. You shall not take the name of Yahweh in vain, and which means to you don't blaspheme it, you don't take it in vain, and which they very much did when they went into the land of when they entered into the land of promise, and they begin to say they are the children of Yahweh, but yet they did the things of the people that was in the land. They were taken, they were saying, I'm Yahweh's. We're the children of Yahweh, but yet they were doing the things of the world and of the other people, and they were blaspheming or taking Yahweh's name in vain. And today I see the very same thing when people holler, I am a child of Yahweh, or I'm a child of Yeshua, and yet they're out here doing everything that they want to do in this world. Same thing. Same identical thing. And
yes, it is.
Of course, I'm not going through all of Yahweh's tables of His covenant that He made with them. The next one, of course, being remember the Sabbath and keep it holy, and honor thy father and mother, and go on down through what we refer to as the 10 Commandments. But that table of the covenant was within that ark of the covenant. In other words, the dwelling place of Yahweh's covenant, the ark, or dwelling place of Yahweh's covenant. And then upon all of that was over it the cherubims, and I can't never pronounce the the way it was supposed to be. A lot of people today say cherubims, but if you pronounce it in Hebrew, it would not be cher, it would be cher. Cherubims, or like I said, I can't pronounce the right guttural sound in my throat to say the cat, C-H-A-T, the letter of Hebrew, and I can't pronounce it correctly. But anyway, it's angels, if you would, winged beings of glory, shadowing the mercy seat, of which we cannot now speak particularly. We can't, speak in detail of that, and I don't think no one can exactly speak in detail of that even this day, because no one really understands completely the mercy seat of Yahweh. We understand and we see enough and understand enough of Yahweh's mercy and Yeshua's grace and mercy that He will save us, and that He does save us, and our faith is in that. But until we come face to face with Him and in all of His glory today, will we finally at that time really understand all of it. But we can say this, that we can boldly come before that and receive the mercy and the grace of Yeshua and Yahweh's love. But anyway, the 10th verse, or I'm sorry, 6th verse here. It says, now when these things were thus ordained, prepared, or put in place, when the tabernacle was built and all of this was prepared and put in place, the priest went always in the first tabernacle, accomplishing the service of Elohim, or of Yahweh. They did their service there, and they did that daily. They was into that first tabernacle, or the holy sanctuary. They were in it daily doing the services of Yeshua and Yahweh. But only in the second tabernacle, and I'm talking about the holiest of all places, came the high priest, and he only did it once every year. Once every year, one time in every year, did the high priest come into this holiest of all, before the mercy seat and before the Ark of the Covenant and before all. He came only one time. But he did not go in there without blood of the sacrifice that was prepared prior to his going in there. He did not go in there without blood. And he offered that blood before that throne, before that mercy seat, before the ark there. He offered it, which, by the way, was the dwelling place of Yahweh during the tabernacle and temple period. At least the tabernacle and the first temple period was the dwelling place of Yahweh. And that was where that the Ark of the Covenant was put. Now the second temple, and I'm not going into that today, but the second temple never contained the Ark of the Covenant. And so that tells me something. I don't know if it tells anybody else nothing or anything, but it tells me something. Because Yahweh's presence was always in that ark, or with that Ark of the Covenant, and with the mercy seat that was upon it. That was Yahweh's presence among man. But into the second went the high priest alone, once every year, and not without blood, which he offered for himself. Now I want you to notice here that this high priest, Aaron, and the ones that followed him, when they went in before that and offered that blood sacrifice, they was offering it not only for the people's errors, but for their own errors. Because no man is made perfect. And so they erred just like the people erred. And their sacrifices, or their errors, had to have an atoning sacrifice also. And that is one of the imperfections of the first covenant. That its priest and high priest was not perfect. They were carnal. I believe we read this in one of the other chapters. And, they died just like the rest of the people. And they had to continually anoint another high priest and appoint another high priest. Had to continue. Why? Because they were not perfect. They died just like everybody else. And that was one of the imperfections of the earthly carnal tabernacle, is that it did not have a eternal priesthood or priest that could offer the sacrifices eternally. It was not there. Nor also, as we will read here, nor was the sacrifices that priest made, was they perfect enough in order to accomplish the cleansing of the sins of the people. They only served as a covering for the people. And I want y'all all to understand this and to see this and see the difference between the two covenants and even the tabernacles that is now upon this earth. I want you to see the difference in them. And see that they cannot be the same. They are totally different. And they cannot be the same. In that the first one was imperfect, but the second one is perfect. Its high priest is perfect. Everything about it is perfect. But the first one was not. Never perfect. And it was not ever intended to be perfect. It was only to show the people that they needed a perfect one. And that goes into another study about the people that had faith in the coming of the Messiah, and those that were resurrected and after his death, and those that were presented as first fruits offering of him, and goes even deeper than that, further in that than that. And maybe one day when Yeshua gives me the authority, I can teach on that a little bit. But right now I can't speak. That's one of the things I can't particularly speak of right now. But anyway, but the next verse says here, and the Holy Spirit, this signifying, letting everybody know, because they had to go in there at least once a year. They had to minister in its daily in the first tabernacle, the first sanctuary, but in the second sanctuary they went in once every year to offer an atoning blood sacrifice for the errors of the priest and also of the children there. And that was signifying, the Holy Spirit signifying that the way into the holiest of all was not yet made manifest. Nobody understood it, nobody seen it, it was not there. But it was a type and shadow of the perfect one. While, it was not that the way into the holiest of all was not yet made manifest, while as the first tabernacle was yet standing. We understand when Yeshua walked out of the tabernacle, or the temple, I'm sorry, when he walked out of the temple, discussing with the Pharisees and Sadducees inside and trying to tell them who he was and what he was, but yet they totally denied him. And matter of fact, picked up stones to stone him, because him being a man, or in the likeness of man, as we find out, made himself Yahweh. They picked up stones to stone him, but he goes through them, passes through the crowd, untouched. And as he comes out of the temple, he makes a proclamation, O Jerusalem, how often would I have gathered you under my wings as a hen would do her chicks, but you would not. And his disciples, seeing that he was pretty well upset, began to show him the temple and begin, how beautiful place man has built for Yahweh. Look at this beautiful temple. And Yeshua looked at them and told them, said, there's a time coming that there's not going to be one stone set upon another of this temple. No matter how beautiful it is, and no matter what man has purpose to present to Yahweh or make it look to Yahweh, Yeshua said, I'll tell you now, there's not going to be one stone set upon another that's not going to be torn down. Why? Because the second one, the second covenant, the new covenant, could not be established as while that one was still standing. Because man would continue, as they did for 70 years there, continue to make the sacrifices of the old covenant instead of paying attention to the new and receiving and observing the new. They would continue to do the old. And in 70 A.D., he had it destroyed, and there has not been another one. And even if there is another one, it won't be to the same thing as Yeshua is. And you as the tabernacle of Yeshua. It will only be served, and they will sacrifice in it, no doubt, but it will only be to serve, to show who he truly is. And to accomplish some other things too, because we also know that the one that proclaims himself to be God has to sit in the place of God, in other words, in that temple, and proclaim himself to be God. And then Yeshua shows him who he really is and shows everybody who he really is. But anyway, that's another one too. But anyway, this first tabernacle, the second could not come until the first was while it was yet standing. Now, some people will say, well, for 70 years there, Yeshua was being taught and that temple was still there, he was bringing in the tabernacle, the second tabernacle. He was establishing the second tabernacle. On the day of Pentecost, he established that tabernacle by entering in, if you will, the children there that was in the upper room, and then beginning to get to prophesy and to teach about Yeshua, and from there forth. But others continued to do the other, and he tore it down like he said he would. That tabernacle was yet standing, and the scripture here says, which was a figure for the time then present, in which were offered both gifts and sacrifices that could not make him that did the service perfect as pertaining to the conscience, to the conscience, or to the soul of man. And these ordinances and these gifts and these sacrifices stood only in meats and drinks and divers washings and carnal ordinances imposed on them until the time of Reformation. Now, the time of Reformation and the restoration of all things is not the same thing. The time of Reformation came with Yeshua.
It's the freshly.
It came with Yeshua. He reformed. He redone everything. He brought it about a different way now, a new way. Him being our high priest, and we being the temple of that high priest. And so if I'm talking about the restoration of all things, or if I'm talking until the Reformation, I'm talking about two different things here, and two different events. The restoration of all things. I don't know how many of you, and if I had the board set up, I might take the time to explain to you. But there's many teachers today. A lot of people look at God's walk. Like Psalms teaches us. About the walking in the paths of righteousness, and people look at that path as a straight line, which it's not a straight line or a path line. It is actually, and if you look at the Hebrew word of the paths of righteousness there, if you look at the Hebrew word for it and the definitions, you will find that it's more of a circular situation, and if you and it shows very clearly when you look at it as a circular situation, where the scriptures is talking about the restoration of all things. You can see, and actually that circle has not yet been completed. It's not yet there. Because all things have not been yet restored. And I can take you through generational periods of time, and I was showing Pat this morning about this, and when we got to talking about it, and I was showing her about, a lot of people shows this circle, and in their teaching, some of the teachings, they make a complete circle, and talking about things, coming back, coming back, coming back. Well, they do if you're talking about the, like the moon, phases of the moon. It's continuously the same. It's the same moon, and it makes the same thing continually. It continually, the years are the, they continually, the earth, the sun rotating around the earth rotating around the sun, and all of this is a continuous circle, and it summer, spring, summer, fall, winter, spring, summer, fall, winter, spring, continuously. But the overall thing, the restoration overall, has not yet been completed, because man has not yet been restored, or all things, I'm sorry, All things have not yet been restored. And they won't be restored until Yeshua comes back.
That's right.
And heaven and earth, this heaven and earth here is done away with, and the new heavens and the new earth is brought in, and everything is restored back to when the creation, when Yeshua or Yahweh created the heavens and the earth and all things that was in them, and created man and placed him in the garden there in Eden. He placed him in the garden there, where that man at that time, prior before sin, man knew no sin. And all he knew was Yahweh and him alone. You know, there is the completion of the restoration of all things when man is brought back to that point, to where there is no longer any sin once again, you know, and in the world. There's no more sin, and that's the restoration. That's the restoration of all things. It's not the restoration as many Hebrew roots and Messianic teachers teach, restoring things back to Sinai. That's stupid to even think about that being the restoration of all things, because Sinai, if you know and understand, Sinai represented bondage. Why would I want to be restored back to bondage? You know, I want to be restored back to complete freedom in Yahweh. So, you know, why would I want to go there? So that's not the restoration of all things, restoring back to the old covenant. I'm sorry. If I offend somebody because calling it stupid, I'm sorry, but that's exactly what it is, to be stupid to even think that's what he means by restoration of all things. But I'm sorry, that's the way it is. And anyway, let me go back and go over 9 and 10 here just real quickly again. The old tabernacle, the old covenant, was a figure for the time then present, at that time, that generation, and generational period. That time was, you know, it was for them, and it was a figure for the time then present, in which were both offered both gifts and sacrifices that could not make him that did the service perfect, as pertaining to the conscience of the soul, which stood only in meats and drinks and divers washes and carnal ordinances imposed on them until the time of Reformation. Now, I want you to understand when he's talking about they stood only in meats and drinks and divers washings and carnal ordinances imposed on them, that does not mean like the clean and unclean foods, and he is specifically talking about here the actions or the services of the temple and of the tabernacle. There, he's referring to the different things that was taking place within the tabernacle and the services unto Yahweh at that time. Not the services that are not the laws concerning, you know, what Yahweh had taught people. You know, they tell me today, you know, that Yeshua cleaned all the meats and we can eat all the pork and the shrimp and the lobster and the catfish, and you know, we can eat all that we want to eat now. But yet they say, well, wait a minute, you still can't commit adultery. You know, I mean, we still believe that's wrong. You know. As far as the meats, the eating of the clean and unclean and the explanation and the laws of the clean and unclean had nothing to do with the service of the temple. They are totally opposite. The clean and the unclean is that we're not to eat or partake of, simply is also a figure of, and a type and a shadow of, if you will, of whether you will obey Yahweh or not. And man has chosen to disregard what Yahweh says, and disobey Yahweh. And saying, well, that's done away with, so now I can do what I want to. I'm sorry, that's another thing too. I don't really need to get into all of that either, because I'm still trying to see the difference between the tabernacles and the covenants, the old and the new, the earthly tabernacle and now the heavenly tabernacle, are Yeshua's tabernacle, which is actually you and I. But Messiah being come a high priest of good things to come by a greater and a more perfect tabernacle, not made with the hands. That is to say, not of this building, not of this world, not of the earthly tabernacle that was made, or, if you will, not of this creation. I was thinking the other, while I was reading this during the week and kind of studying on it and letting Yeshua reveal things to me, I probably should have looked the scripture up to be sure, but because, you know, the scriptures teach us that, you know, in one verse, and if we take it wrong, well, you know, about, and some other verses too, but talking about, you know, that the Spirit of Yahweh will not dwell in an unclean temple. So now we got to clean this temple up, you know. We got to make it clean. Well, I got news for you. This thing right here, this thing is never going to be clean before God, and that's but that's not the tabernacle or the sanctuary. Now He's living within this tabernacle, but within this tabernacle He has made a new creation. If you will read, and I can tell you where this is at. It is in Romans, and I believe it's in the 6th chapter of Romans. But you can tell where he's talking about we become a new creature, or if you will, we become a new creation in Yeshua. When He sets up his tabernacle within you and I, He sets up within a new creation, a new tabernacle. And if you or if anyone else is not manifesting that tabernacle, then I have my concerns about your confession of what you are. If you're not manifesting that new creation, then, and you're only manifesting this creation, then, you know, I have questions. I don't have judgments, I have questions. But anyway, this is where he's talking about, you know, not of this building, not of this creation. He makes a new creation in you and I, in which He sets up His abode in. And so, you know, that's something else that we have to grow into and grow and understand and grow in understanding of, you know. But, you know, I don't, like I said, I don't want to go too far or try to get too far off of what I'm trying to teach to you today about the difference between the Old Covenant and the New Covenant. There's so much to learn right here. And by the way, I don't know if you're starting to catch the Passover and the unleavened bread and first fruits of this. I don't know if you're starting to see it here yet or not, but if you ain't, well then I already know I'm not going to get through this whole chapter today. I'm probably just going to get through these 14 verses here that I read to start with. But even after we get through it, if you will, and even though Passover comes to an end next Wednesday, I want us to kind of course, it's still close enough when we come into it next Sabbath that we can still see the comparison or still see the Passover being fulfilled in these scriptures here, if you look at it through the Spirit. But anyway, I hope you're seeing that. But now in both the old and the new, neither by the blood of goats and calves, but by his own blood he entered in once into the holy place, having obtained eternal redemption for us. So now we see over here, it says, you know, where they went into the second tabernacle, they didn't go into it without blood. And this new covenant is also not established without blood. It's got the blood, but it's the blood of our high priest and of our perfect sacrifice. And the 12th verse says, neither by the blood of goats or calves. Yeshua didn't enter in to the heavenly holy place with the blood of goats and calves, but by his own blood he entered in once into the holy place, having obtained eternal redemption for us, having retained the eternal salvation for you and I. Remember, the old covenant could not make the comers thereunto perfect, but this new covenant can make the comers thereunto perfect. He made it, and he entered in one time. And I want you to hang on to that verse, that thing, one time. Remember that, and I'll bring it up in future other teachings, because, ladies and gentlemen, if we continue to sin and continue to presumptuously sin, knowing the consequences of it, we're going to find out that he's not coming back again and making another blood sacrifice for that sin. You're on your own. But anyway, neither by the blood of goats and calves, but by his own blood he entered in once into the holy place, having obtained eternal redemption for us. For if the blood of bulls and of goats and the ashes of a heifer, sprinkling the unclean, sanctifieth to the purifying of the flesh, the cleansing of it, how much more shall the blood of Yeshua, Messiah, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without spot to Yahweh, purge or cleanse, or whichever way you want to use it, your conscience, your soul from dead works to serve the living Elohim. How much more shall the blood of the Messiah, through the eternal Spirit, offered himself without spot to Yahweh, Elohim, purge your conscience, soul from dead works to serve the living Yahweh. The blood of bulls and of goats and of the ashes of the heifer sprinkling the unclean. Now, if you'll most of y'all at least knows about the red heifer. You know, it tells about in the Old Testament, tells about the old heifer, the red heifer and its purpose. You know, I think I went through that not over two or three services ago. We kind of went through that red heifer, or we done it through fellowship. I forget now which way we went through it, but you know about the red heifer. And the ashes of it, when you became unclean, you had to go out and, you know, sprinkle that with water upon you, and it served as a cleansing for your uncleanliness that was upon you. If you touched a dead body, even in war, or you know, if you touched, you know, you became unclean, you had to go out and sprinkle the ashes of the red heifer and water upon you and stay unclean until evening, and you had to do that on a specific day, 3 days afterwards, or if you didn't, then it wasn't no good, you know, and then after 7 days you were clean. You know, you have to read it to understand it all, but that's what he's talking about as far as the heifer here, the ashes of a heifer. But at the bulls, the blood of bulls and of goats, you know, they are, you know, if that was good enough and was good enough to cleanse, you know, this, then how much more is the blood of the Messiah that was offered through eternal Spirit without spot to Yahweh, cleanse us of our, you know, cleanse our souls. That's going to live on, cleanse that from dead works to serve the living Elohim. How much more is that blood going to do? You know, His blood, the perfect sacrifice. How much more is His blood going to do it? And ladies and gentlemen, it's not a combination of the old and the new. This is not a combination of the old and the new. This is a new covenant of you and I, made with you and I today. In the last days, as the rest of this chapter later on will explain to you that in the end of the world He did this. Which means, and I'll say it once again, like I said, I'm kind of trying to ease this in to where that someday it will get you thinking, to where that someday you'll understand generational times or generational periods. We're in the last time. We're in the last generation. And that generation began with the death, burial, and resurrection of the Messiah, and with His sending back of the Spirit, and now us being the tabernacle of Him. This is the last generation, the end of the world. In the end of the world, this one will last until then, and there won't be another one afterward, not of this world, only of the next world. And I'm trying to get people to understand that, because when you begin to understand that, then you begin to understand more of this a whole lot better, and what's going on with it. But anyway, I hope today that I have what I'm bringing forth to you is giving you a little better understanding of, you know, the old and the new, contrasting the old and the new, and showing, hopefully through the scriptures, that the old and the new, there is an old and there is a new, and that we're not to serve the old, but we are to serve the new. And I hope that this is, I hope that I'm bringing that to you in such a way, well, I know I'm bringing it to you, to those that are His, in such a way that you will, if not now, sooner rather than later, grasp this concept of the difference of the old and the new. So, but anyway, I hope that you understand. And you know, upon that, we'll finish out this chapter next week, and then we'll get into the 10th chapter. And I don't know yet if Yahweh will have us only into the 11th and so forth or not yet. I'll have to follow His. But I know we'll go through the 10th chapter. But until then, and until next week, we say to you, Shalom Aleichem, peace be unto you.